Lecture 3, we're going to take a look at some of the types of pathogens that you might become involved with in the workplace, and where OSHA is particularly concerned with the employees being protected against these types of pathogens. Earlier we talked about the two primary types of pathogens to be concerned about. One was the virus, the other was bacteria. Now, viruses and bacteria are very different. Viruses have been around for a long time, but they are very fragile structures and usually cannot survive outside of their host, a body, except for a very short period of time. So viruses need to be, in order for them to be infectious, they need to be transmitted through some type of liquid, blood, or some other human liquid between hosts. Bacteria, on the other hand, are much more rugged and have been around since the dawn of existence, and can live outside the human body for extended periods of time and can be transmitted in a number of ways. So let's take a look at each of the types of pathogens that these two categories represent. Let's start first with a virus which is very common and very prevalent, which is the hepatitis virus. Here we're going to talk about three different forms of the virus. Let's start off with hepatitis A. Hepatitis A is an acute form of hepatitis. You can pick it up from wading in contaminated water or working around contaminated garbage. It's a very weak form. When we talk about acute, it means it's very sharp and goes away after a short period of time. And that's exactly the way the virus behaves. The virus can be picked up by simply being around contaminated material, but it does not last very long, does not attack the human liver, and usually goes away on its own after a short period of time. So hepatitis A is not really a concern virus. Hepatitis B is a different form of the virus. It used to be referred to as the serum virus because they believed that the only way hepatitis B could be transmitted was through human blood. Now we know that's not the case, that it can be transmitted through needle sticks, blood transfusions, tattooings, getting cut with a razor that somebody else has been used, blood transfusions. It can be transmitted through toothbrushes. It's in a number of ways. Hepatitis B is a very concerning form of the virus because it can hang around for a very long period of time in the human body. It will be in the human body and nest itself in the cells of the liver and eventually attack the liver, causing damage to it and problems and potential death for the person who has been infected. So hepatitis B is a very serious concern because it can stay around for a long period of time. Hepatitis C was previously referred to as the non-A and B type of hepatitis. So it's a form of hepatitis that has been around but has recently been identified as in its own as HCV. Usually spread through needles among drug users and needle sticks, and patients with chronic HCV infection, at risk of developing cirrhosis of the liver, liver failure, and liver cancer. So it is a concern, but it is not as prevalent as hepatitis B. So we focus most of our attention on the hepatitis B virus, which is more prevalent and it hangs around for a longer period of time, can be there for years and years and years and be undetected, simply attacking the cells of the liver. Now, let us talk about the other virus, the HIV virus, or the human immunodeficiency virus. Now, this is a weak virus. For all the terror that it has spread throughout the civilized and the developed and undeveloped worlds, it is a weak virus. Once outside the body, it doesn't last for very long, maybe a few minutes. It actually has a very narrow temperature range that it can survive in. It likes cold temperatures better than warm temperatures. When it gets above 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which is normal room temperature for many of us, it doesn't do well. It tends to die. So between 68 and 39 degrees Fahrenheit are the best temperatures, but it actually does better at temperatures below 39 degrees or very cold weather, because there it gets like being in a freezer. It can sort of go dormant and stay around for a long period of time. But HIV is a weak virus in terms of being very fragile and very difficult to transmit from one host to another, except where there is an exchange of body fluids. Now, we come to the other group, which is known as bacteria. Bacteria are some of the most hardy organisms on the planet. They have been around for a very long period of time and are present in most habitats. Cold, hot, wet, dry. They inhabit the soil, the water. They can even exist in hot springs. They found bacteria in the deep depths of the ocean, in some of the smokers, the volcanic eruptions that come up from the Earth's core. They can survive in a broad range of environments. They are usually transmitted. They can be transmitted through touch, fluid transfer, environmental factors, and they can survive for long periods of time. The good news is that most bacteria tend to be relatively benign. In our bodies, we have a series of bacteria. There are almost as many bacteria in our body as there are blood cells. It's about a 50-50 match, because we are a Gestaltian type of creature. We are a blend of life forms, and the bacteria being one of those, which helps us survive by doing things like, helping the culture in your stomach, processing of food. So bacteria can become problematic if you are dealing with some of the more dangerous forms, as we talked about, like tuberculosis and others. Bloodborne pathogens. Some of the bloodborne pathogen diseases that we need to be concerned about are malaria, syphilis, relapsing fever, as well as things as hepatitis and HIV. These are all forms of bloodborne diseases that we need to be concerned with, and that can affect us if we're exposed to them in the workplace. But we tend to focus, and OSHA has tended to focus, on those which are most prevalent. Many of these may have been a few instances of them, but nothing of merit. But HIV, hepatitis B, and a select number of bacteria, a very small number of bacteria, are things that we're concerned about in the workplace.